Welcome to the Soul Tribe Podcast. The Soul Tribe Podcast was created to help you navigate through the world of spirituality, wellness, and self-development in an easy, grounded, and relatable way. We break down everything from the Akashic Records, manifesting, spirituality, and so much more. We want to help expand your boundaries and bring the spiritual world to you in a fun and easy way. Get ready to be inspired with tips, tools, and easy to digest information. Let's do this.
Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Soul Tribe Podcast. Today, Lorena and I got the chance to interview Laura Lee, a medium with these really amazing abilities, and we were lucky enough to be able to talk to her about her path into this mediumship, how she learned that she had this ability, how it runs in her family or her gene line, her thoughts about the spirit worlds and her experiences with the spirit worlds and connecting with the messages of the loved ones of those that have passed over to the other side. It was really interesting because we also got into stories from Lorena and our side about our own experiences with, phenomenons of different types. So stay tuned to this episode, enjoy it, and I hope you guys like it because we had so much fun. We had so much fun talking to Laura. Thank you so much again for coming onto the podcast with us. You're a medium and a communicator with spirit and angels. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And when did this come into your life? Was it something since you were young or did it come in when you were older?
Young. I recognized that I was having these experiences at a very young age, but kind of believed at the time that it was happening to everybody. I didn't think it was something out of the ordinary, especially when it came to spirits, because the women in my family talked all the time openly about, saw so-and-so last night, and they said this and those type of experiences. And I thought it was just part of what was happening to everybody else.
So other people in your family were experiencing this connection also?
Yeah, I mean, mostly, of course, women, the women down my line, and having connections with departed loved ones primarily. But I was also having some profound experiences, and it got a little scary for me. Nighttime was really hard for me because, and I'll explain it later, that I find that when we're in a more relaxed state and we've let go of maybe our daily burdens and such, and we're open and receptive, they're more likely to happen in those and commune with us in those hours. Mm-hmm. So it was a frightening experience as I, became more aware and more open to them. And it just never went away for me. I know a lot of children, it kind of goes away for them because of a parent or a teacher dismissing it, the experiences and, stop doing that, because they're scared, right? And they'll shut down. And in fact, I've had a nephew and a niece who've had, and also a daughter that have these experiences. And when it started happening for them, there were some family members who were frightened by the experience and dismissed it. And I wasn't around at the time. I was traveling. I was actually on circuit by that time. Wow. So they thought I was influencing, and I wasn't because I wasn't there. So, it's just something that happens largely to a lot of children and older people, I find, because they're open.
Yeah.
and receptive.
That's, I mean, that's
So,
scary as a child, seeing something that you don't understand. And I mean, how did you deal with it? Like, what was your coping mechanism as a child when that was happening?
well, as a child, I wouldn't sleep hardly.
Oh my gosh.
And I would, bury my head under the covers.
That's
So,
sad.
with a little peephole for breathing.
Yes.
It dealt with it. It was high anxiety. Let me put it this way. So, going to bed at night and being in the dark and being aware of the forces around us, and that was a little challenging. Yeah.
I can imagine. Wow. So you were saying before that other people in your family were kind of going through the same thing. Do you think this is something that was like, I don't know how it works, right? But is it passed down?
Well, I believe it is. I've heard other mediums say that, it has transcended through their families as well. And I found out later on when I went away for many years away from home. I'd say probably a good 25 years. I mean, come back and forth, but when I had gone out publicly and really embraced this gift and started sharing it on a public level, I discovered that I had an aunt, a great aunt, who did the same thing in her private time, but it wasn't really public, that she worked with people as a medium. And one of my aunts told me about this when I came back, and she said she wasn't surprised because they were waiting for who would have it next.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
So, and I had no influence by this woman on the physical level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So not on a physical level. And I wasn't aware of that until, I was back and they were, then open and receptive to understanding why I went this path.
Now, did you have to continue to develop it to continue working with it?
Well, I'll tell you what happened then. And you might have heard some of my story. You said that you caught some of it on George Norrie's show.
Yes.
On Beyond Belief. But what happened is going into my teens, I started an eating disorder, and it started with a diet pill given to me by someone and encouraged me to go down that path. So I got caught up with this eating disorder and diet, which was basically, and that's another thing that passed down my family, unfortunately. And I'm laughing about it, but it's like any other addiction. It kind of helps you deal and cope with things you can't understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it escalated out of control, and I started that probably it was about 9, 10. So going into my freshman year, it was just completely out of control. I say my freshman year in college. Okay.
Wow.
And during that time period, I mean, it just kept escalating, getting worse and getting worse. And when you start to lower your vibration, and I know you girls understand this, being psychics yourself, and your energy starts to drop, you can't perform, you can't make those connections. And so that's the way I dealt with it. And then so the connections weren't happening on a regular basis for me because I was too caught up in my addiction at the time.
That makes sense.
And then what happened is about my freshman year, I realized I was getting to a point where I was going to kill myself. I mean, it was at that desperate level where if I didn't do something different, I was going to hurt myself. I was going to kill myself. So, through the eating disorder, because I was having heart palpitations, hair falling out, teeth falling out, the whole works.
Oh my God.
Barely functioning, freshman year in college. So one night, I was a binge eater and one who would purge. which is called bulimia. And I had a spell one night and passed out from the experience. Nobody was around. All my friends and my roommate were gone, and I was doing this alone. And I had a visitation from an angel.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
And yeah. I mean, saw her in perfect form right before me, come to me and share with me that, you know, I'm loved and to embrace myself. And, you know, not so much in words, but the feeling was transmitted and basically shared with me that I, you know, can't be doing this to myself anymore. And I was going to come out of it, and I was going to be assisted and healed. And then basically I have to share what I've got, you know, within me. I've got to let it go, and also not to be afraid of who I am. So, and that's it in a nutshell. But I've got to tell you, the experience with an angel is so profound, and the love was so intense. It was beyond anything human experience of love, what love would feel like. You know, it's not a romantic love. It's, I don't know if you're mothers or not, but I would say the closest thing to that love is the love you have for a child, but it was even profound, more profound than that. And I don't even think words can give it justice. But so when I came out of that, you know, my life turned around.
Yeah.
And I went on this healing path, and I started having confirmations of the visitation. I went home, I think that was during Christmas break, and I had another episode where I was submitted to the hospital. And that's where I was recommended to go into a counseling group and a group, you know, to start healing myself for the eating disorder. And my family helped, and I had a great support, and I got better. And as I got better, my connections became strong again.
Oh my gosh. But at that point you were accepting it, right?
Yeah, I was starting to accept it. And I came back to school, and one of my friends at the time, I get chills as I think about it. I had heard my experience of going down for the count, and she wasn't around at that night when it happened, and I had come back, and she handed me a book by Leo Biscaglia. I don't know if you guys know who he is.
No.
But Leo Biscaglia is a professor over at Berkeley at the time, and he taught a course on love, and which was really far out in those days, right? No, it still is these days. They have a Berkeley professor teach a whole course on love, but he wrote a book called Love, and she handed it to me and had inscribed in the book how, you know, I needed this, and, you know, she thought it would be perfect timing for me. And she gave it to me as a birthday gift when I came back to school. And it was just a confirmation. And I know that sounds silly, but to me, it was do you understand what I'm saying? It was a personal confirmation that I was on track. And so as I became better, my energy started to come back up, and I started taking care of myself and loving myself, which was probably about a 5-year journey, and that was into my 20s. You know, then I started exploring this as a possibility, but I did it on the side because I graduated with a business degree in specializing in communications, believe it or not.
That's really funny.
Yeah, it was all about communications for me.
Yeah.
So, so that's the long story of it. I hope that was condensed enough, but
that was amazing.
So, yeah, it's been interesting. So, and I stayed connected to that angel ever since.
Is that your guardian angel?
My guardian angel, and that's been my mentor, basically.
Oh, that's awesome. So what did she have to work with you to help you get your vibration up and help you connect better?
Well, I believe that the people who came into my life from that point on were assisting me in developing and as well, embracing myself as who I am. I went into, for a while I was still, getting healthier and developing my confidence. I was in the corporate world and I was in marketing communications and worked in that field for a while before I left it behind and made the giant leap into the spiritual arena, which, shocked a lot of family members because everybody went to school and, went on traditional paths. So going off track and going out in left field was a shock for them. And it was more about them than it was for me. I think a little embarrassment. But then when they realized what I was doing, they're all 100% behind me now.
You're helping people. You're helping channel information and maybe even like give people kind of a way to cope with things, right?
Yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah. To find some closure.
Yeah.
Find closure and find healing. It's not the path for everybody. I mean, traditional healing works for some, and maybe traditional counseling doesn't help some people find that closure, whereas working with a medium might for some.
For sure.
So that's where I see this tool come in. It's like a alternative therapy.
Yeah, totally. And so, for example, Lorena and I are Akashic Records readers. So our process is like opening the Akashic Records and the Akashic books. But like, do you have a specific process where you're going to help an individual receive messages? Do you do a certain process for you to connect, or is it just already kind of there?
It's already there. And it doesn't mean that I don't. I do say an invocation to open up the corridors to make sure I'm making the connection for those individuals that I work with at that moment, to begin the process. But it's basically there. For instance, I'll receive connections and visitations from people's spirits before we even meet. And so I'll have, pen and paper always handy, and I'm always taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I guess my question would be, it's kind of like, I don't know. I always wonder with someone like you that has these amazing gifts that not only help people, but can also, I guess, be hard for you, right? Is it hard? Like, I don't know, maybe when you're at home, you're hanging out, you're chilling, and then you have like these spirits visiting you. How does that work for you?
Mm-hmm.
How do you block that out, or do you not block it out?
Well, I've learned to manage it. So when I was a child, I didn't know how to manage it because I didn't have anybody who could really instruct me over it, on how to manage it. And because I think mine went a little bit deeper maybe than a lot of my family members did. And so what I've come to learn is I got to stay high vibing, meaning I have to take good care of myself. And, whether that's doing yoga and meditating and eating right to stay balanced and energized and to make those connections possibly happen. So when I'm in my open field, if I see something come up or have a connection with a spirit, I just, for later, I'll write the notes down and I'll say for later, later,
Okay.
connect with me later. I'm not scared anymore. I'm not on edge, or I'm not as I was as a kid, if that makes sense. So now it's not, I'm barraged by spirit. I mean, I'm doing my thing and my worldly things and everything. And if something comes to me, I'll open up my pad and write the note and everything, and then I'll just put them aside and I'll say, for later.
That's incredible.
So,
oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
What about if there's an individual that doesn't really believe in life after death? Are those individuals still receiving messages from loved ones that have departed?
Yes, I believe we all have the ability. Yeah. And they probably don't realize they're having the experience with a departed loved one as a visitation. They probably don't make that connection as I would now, as I see the process work. And I talk about this a lot on my own personal show, that a lot of people say, I talk to them all the time. I can hear them in my thoughts. That's how they're communicating to me. Mm-hmm. And whether or not they see a daydream of them, that's a visitation. That's how a medium works. I saw them in my dream. Yep, that's how a medium works. I heard them singing the other day in my head. I can't get it out. Yep, that's how a medium works. Do you see how simple it is?
Yeah,
it is.
It's so simple, but it's so subtle. I'm connected to that level. I'm paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Whereas an ordinary person or somebody who believes that life after death doesn't exist, and they'll say, well, that's just my thought. Is it?
Okay. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
is it?
Yeah, I guess there's like a fine line there. So I guess my question here would be, can anyone become a medium and like communicate with spirits? Is that something that's possible?
I think it can be taught, and I do teach it. I think it can be taught. It's a level of awareness of what's happening in your environment and becoming really present with the subtle influences that are coming in and out of your force or your field of energy is the best way I can describe it. So yes, I think everybody has, and some people are just more tuned in than others. Like for instance, as I said, some kids lose it because they're told it's not right. And I also had the church who was telling me that it was blasphemous to be connecting with spirit, right?
Yep.
And so, but it's funny, the church can do it, and the church talks about how, let's just go to the Christianity, because I was raised in that environment, how the disciples and Mary could make connections, but what, we can't?
Yeah.
Good point.
Right? So, no, we all can make those connections, and I think it can be developed over time, but it scares a lot of people. Yeah. It scares a lot of people, and I can understand why it's scary, because it's the unknown.
For sure.
What would you say to like an individual who doesn't believe in life after death, that thinks that we're just flesh and once we die, we disappear? Like, would you say any words to them to help them understand that there's something more than that?
No, I don't even bother. I let them believe what they want to believe. I mean, why expend the energy? They're going to believe what they believe. I'm not here to make anybody a believer. I'm here if the person is open and receptive and open to the experience. I mean, I have skeptics who come to my events and or, give me a ring and give it a shot. And if they're, on the border, that's fine. A healthy level of skepticism is totally understandable. But I just don't bother putting my energy and trying to make people believe. It's just too exhausting.
No, yeah, that makes sense. And something you just said there kind of reminds me also of how we manage the Akashic records. It's like we can sometimes receive people that want a reading and they might not believe what's going on,
right,
and try to prove us wrong. And that happens, and that's okay. But it's like, if you don't believe, that's fine. I'm not here to prove anything to you. It's literally, I'm just going to channel the information you need that will serve you and that will help you. So I
Exactly.
understand exactly where you're coming from with that. And
Yeah.
obviously the Akashic records also believe in reincarnation and the soul kind of
Mm-hmm.
back and all of that. It's kind of similar, I guess. But do you
I agree.
believe that spirits can communicate even if they've moved on to like another disincarnated dimension?
Yes, the best way I can describe it is like a telephone. So I believe you can call upon them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no different than you and I connecting through cellular. There's no cords.
Yeah.
There's no cords.
Yeah.
So if you have a thought of a loved one, and the same goes for our loved ones here in the physical flesh, okay? If you have a thought of them and then next second they call, it's no different.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true.
That's
Yeah, if
how
you
it
look at it
works
that
with
way.
spirit.
That
Mm-hmm.
always happens to Lorraine and I. always think about her and then she'll call me, but I was just going to call you.
Exactly.
And so what about like spirits that are stuck in, like they've departed, they've no longer in their body, but they're stuck on like the earth dimension, whatever reason they can't move on. Have you like been able to let them know like, hey, you should move on or go to the light or whatever it is that you might say to them? Like, are you able to help them move on, or it just depends on them?
Yes. I think the one it happens to be tied to an individual who's here and can't let go. It's usually the person who's in grief. And I think that's what mediums do, is to help both souls here in the physical plane, like physical human beings, and spirits on the other side, release and surrender and let go. Because yes, they can be communicated to, no matter what level they go to. And it's for both souls to find peace. And for those souls here in the physical plane, for instance, a really live human being, to walk forward in their life and have some sort of sense of connection to their own life and moving forward and making the most of it, because this is a gift. Life is a gift. And spirit on the other side, they're usually attached to their loved ones because the loved one can't let go.
Yeah.
So that's the work of a medium.
Oh, I see.
Beautiful. Okay.
By delivering the healing message, the soul can move on in a way.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
There's what's the word for seeking? It's unfinished business.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when these spirits come or appear, I don't know, like, do you see them? I always wonder that, like, how do they appear to you? Is it just like words or a physical form? And like, do they have specific messages that kind of repeat that you can like maybe share with like the audience?
They're all different, just like human beings. Some are more visual to me. Some are more auditory than visual. Some encompass all those tools. They definitely emit feeling through me. I can see them if they reveal things to me. I can hear them. I can feel them. But again, it's always based on the spirit I'm connecting to. And it also has a lot to do with the individual that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
And how open they are. So when you talked about process, that's perhaps why I may begin working with somebody with an invocation to let them know this is a safe space. We're doing this and we're working together in the light, and nothing bad's going to happen. Because that's the other thing. A lot of people believe that if you call in spirit, you could call in all other kinds of things. But from my personal experience, 99.99999% we're working with benevolent spirits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay. So you don't have to really protect yourself in that way, because it's the good energy that you're really receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm already doing the work on a day-to-day basis myself personally to keep my high vibing, my energy high in order to make those connections possible for other people. Not to say I'm a perfect human being, because I have my days, right?
We all do.
We're not 100%, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, of course.
but I do my best. It's part of my job to make sure I'm on the up and up.
And so, can anybody's departed loved ones send them a message? Like, let's say that somebody really wants a message from an individual that passed away. Are there certain souls that just will never communicate, or are they always open to give the messages to that person that really needs it or wants it?
I find that if the message needs to get through, it's going to either come through me if they're willing to come to me, the recipient's willing to come to me, or the message is going to come through. It can come through another party. It can come through a child. It can come through a stranger. It can come through another loved one in the family who's alive. Mm-hmm. The message is going to come through regardless. It can also come through in their dreams. So their message is going to get through. Whether or not they receive it is the other thing.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people will go, oh, that's interesting, and just maybe pass it off. Like, for instance, I know a lot of people, or a lot of clients I've worked with, or students, I should say, when, I discuss that the thought will come through and it's a repeated message and it keeps coming through and keeps coming through. That's them trying to tap you on the head.
Yeah.
And how many times do you have to hear it? 3 times or more, you pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're obviously trying to get something to you, a message across.
Exactly.
They spent 3 years contacting me via premonition dreams, and I was like, no, I'm crazy. No. This was like 10 years ago, and it just kept happening, and it was exhausting dreams. Like, they were very vivid, and I would wake up and I felt like I ran a marathon. And it took them 3 years of consistently bothering me with them for me to go, oh, maybe I should do something about this.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that. I remember having a conversation on another show with a woman who called in and said that she had heard for 19 years that she needed to be a sonogram, work in sonograms to help ladies with, to see their babies, right?
Uh-huh.
And she dismissed it, but she had heard this for 19 years.
Oh my goodness.
It's just like, how many times do you have to hear it?
Did she end up doing it?
What's it gonna? Yeah, she was just starting to go down that path. And so you got to pay attention to those repeated messages, and especially if it comes from a loved one. Yeah. For instance, it could be even a song. Oh, really? And there's meaning behind the song. Yeah, it can be a beautiful song. I just connected with a woman the other day whose one of her favorite songs with her husband was Unforgettable by Nat King Cole.
Yeah, I love that song.
Yes. Yeah, and that tune was a connection between her and her husband. And I mentioned it to her without her prompting it, because I heard the song.
Oh my goodness, she dropped to the floor when she heard that.
She hears it all the time. She goes, I got his Nat King Cole albums all around me. That was his favorite singer, and that was our song. That was one of our songs.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me,
so
the numbers, because I listened to one of your shows this morning, and it was about the number 444, because I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Numbers for me are big, and I feel like they're always messages, or when I'm asking a question, I get numbers. Is that like a big thing with angels for them to?
It is, because numbers are the language of the universe. And so the scientific community, the mathematical community, the whole universe can be put together through numbers. So they're tapping into that mode of communications to communicate with people as well. Yes, that's one mode. Cool. That's one mode of connection. You visually see it. So when you visually see it, that's just one way they can pass that message on to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wonder, is it just me always looking at the clock at the same time? Like, it's just weird.
What's your number that you're always seeing? Is it just the 444 you're saying?
Or I'll wake up and it'll be like 111, or just random numbers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny.
444 is your angels are present, but 111, if whatever you're thinking about, make sure your thoughts are in alignment with a higher connection. Like, it's a snapshot of your thoughts. So make sure, like, if you're in fear in that moment, change your thoughts.
Okay.
So
I was half asleep, but
yeah, and to me, it's also a dream number. It's just like, okay, why don't you concentrate in that moment about something, a bigger vision for yourself, which you already know what it is because you've heard it 100 times of what you're supposed to be doing, which you guys are living right now.
Yeah.
It's a unique path, but you're living it. You're feeling soul connected to what you're doing for other people and the messages you're delivering to the Akashic records, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So you also are able to contact or communicate with angels. Does it feel or is it received the same way as spirit for you?
Yeah. Yes, it's a little higher vibe. It's a little higher vibe than spirits. Not to put them in any order, but the best way I can explain is spirits are a little closer vibration to Earth, because to me, spirits are walking among us right now. Mm-hmm. Spirits are with us. They're in another plane of existence, but they're right here among us. And to me, I feel like angelic connections are at a higher vibration that would be lovely if humanity could get to that level, but I don't know if we ever will. It seems like we keep repeating cycles historically, unfortunately, right? But I think their attempt is to help some of us evolve to help other people evolve.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I guess with angels, like, do you see them? Or I'm sure every experience for you is different, but do you physically see them, or is it in general you sense their energy and you know that they're present? Is it either with yourself or with someone that you're like helping?
Both, depending on the circumstance. Both. So if, for instance, I was with a lady who was, talking about, her career passion, and I saw an angel there with painting easel and, paint brushes and working on an easel. And to me, that described she was a painter, an artist, and she said she was. And her guardian was showing me this. So, sometimes those visual images will be clear, other times not. And, but I already know that they're there, so I don't need to always tap into the visual. But if I need it, I'm given it. And again, same goes for people. You know how you say, whatever is needed, I give to the client. I trust that I will be given what I'm needed. during the process.
I would love to be able to see what you see, because like I've started recently angelic healing, and the people I've done it on, like they've had really, really amazing experiences. I don't see anything, but I can really sense the vibration. But oh my God, that I can't
Feel it.
imagine how, I was seeing it. I would be like, oh my God, like, but for now I can strongly feel it.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a lot of light. It's a lot of light, meaning you really will see light. I don't know. Do you practice meditation?
Oh my God, I've been doing like an hour a day lately.
Oh, fantastic. So that's the path to making those connections stronger, for sure. So if you're sitting in a meditation and you get to that state where you feel like you're plugged in, I don't know if you understand what I'm sharing here, but it's like an electrical force that goes through your body, and you can just feel yourself just elevate at a higher level, a higher energy. And all of a sudden, even with your eyes closed, it feels like a light was turned on.
I don't think I've got that exactly, but I've gotten feelings a lot, or I can feel like the tingling sensation in my body. I'll feel floaty, and my mind will completely stop thinking. It'll like go.
Right, and it'll just be there.
Yeah.
Well, that's it too, and you can feel it through the heart. You can feel the vibration through your entire body. It's like tingling feelings from head to toe, right?
Yeah. Are you meditating daily? Yeah. Is that something that you continue doing?
Yes.
That's
great. I mean, if I've got my family life, if time doesn't permit at night, I'll skip it, but I try to. Yes, every day. And then I'll meditate before working with clients.
Yeah.
That's good. We try to do that as well. Like have like a mini meditation. I think at least I try to do that. Kind of like you kind of ground yourself. I think that's super important with any kind of work like this. Right?
To me, that's the protection.
Okay.
To me, that's the bulletproof. That makes you strong. And that puts that in itself is almost the force field that of energy you can build around you, where nothing will touch you. I don't know if when you're meditating, you've realized you've gone out into the world and things that would have bothered you before don't bother you anymore.
Totally.
Yes.
Right?
I'll leave things pending, and when I come back to them, I'll be like, oh, I'm not so mad anymore. Okay.
Yeah. You see things as they are. It's no big deal. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And you aren't moved or swayed off kilter. Whereas if you hadn't meditated, you might be more prone to do that. It doesn't mean that you can't be a meditator and then not go off kilter. I read an article, funny thing, I think it was today or yesterday, online. It was the news about a yoga instructor going berserk and hitting somebody on some train.
Oh, gosh. Doesn't meditate enough.
Maybe he wasn't meditating enough or doing yoga enough, but that's supposed to help us transcend that.
Oh man.
That kind of sensation or urge, right? So
yeah.
Jeez.
And so speaking about guardian angels, if someone wants, I'm well aware, and I think everybody believes that believes in these things, believe in guardian angels. But if they were to, for example, ask for assistance because they were semi-sick, do you say that it's best for them to ask for healing energies from their guardian angels instead of, for example, Raphael?
Oh, whatever they feel comfortable. I'll mention Raphael. However, if they have a particular angel in mind or deity, doesn't necessarily have to be an angel. If there's a connection to a deity they feel more comfortable calling upon. I got clients from all different religions who have connections with a special deity that they feel urgent to call upon, that entity can help as well. And I also believe that even asking our loved ones on the other side to, assist in some level doesn't hurt as well. Doesn't matter.
So they can do
to
that?
me, it pardon me?
So that was also one of our questions. Like, can our loved ones that
Mm-hmm.
are on the other side, they can help us in this life here as human beings, like on this earthly experience?
Yes, to me, I see that some of them can be guides to us. They may have lived through experience very similar to ours and help us rise to the occasion through an experience that we're dealing with. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, I can think of so many stories with everything that we talk about, but I had another client who called me on the radio show, and she had her grandmother come through who raised her, and I realized her grandmother was into volunteering, and I wasn't sure if it was her grandmother that did the volunteering, it was her that did the volunteering. But come to find out, her grandmother inspired her to volunteer, which she was doing after her grandmother passed.
Mm-hmm.
And now she was taking it to the next level into a career, the volunteer and working for an organization where it was nonprofit. And so she was taking it to another level. And her grandmother was an inspiration and a guide for her on that path.
That's
So
beautiful.
when you feel aligned to somebody who inspired you, and it doesn't even have to be a loved one. It can be, let's say, somebody who's prominent who's crossed over. Let's say somebody's drawn to Mark Twain's work of art and call forth Mark Twain to help guide and assist in the process of writing, for instance. So our loved ones, yes, they can act. So, to come back around, our loved ones can serve as guides in our lifetime. Absolutely.
And so what about, like, sometimes I'd be fearful to maybe bother a soul. Maybe that soul's in the process of incarnating into another life. Like, would you be kind of semi-blocking them from progressing by asking them for assistance?
I don't think you're ever blocking anything, because it's so much bigger. It's so much bigger than we can even comprehend. So if they're there, they're going to be there. But I do believe you're right. That our families can reincarnate and come through again as well. And they can serve as connections on both sides. But see, our souls are much bigger they're not inhabited in a body per se. They're big and expansive beyond our body.
Yeah.
I don't see the body as a box for the soul. To me, I feel like it's much bigger and expansive than that.
Well, I'm obsessed with Michael Newton's books, Journey of Souls, and I'm reading his second book where he does case studies he did case studies and put them under meditation and took them to the afterlife. And he talks about that in the book where, like, usually we carry like only one third of the soul, and the rest of it stayed behind or can be living a parallel life. And that book was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, to me, it's multiple levels at one time. Because who was this again? Who was the author?
Michael Newton. He was a hypnotherapist. He passed away, but he was a hypnotherapist and did, I want to say thousands of case. I don't remember the number, but thousands of case studies where he would put them under hypnosis. And he didn't believe in anything. And one day, but mistakenly, one went to a past life. And then another time, he had a case where they mistakenly went to an afterlife in between lives. And then he's like, that's it, I'm dedicating my time to studying cases of in between lives. And it's amazing information about what souls do and the process that they go through when they're not incarnated. It's very interesting, his case studies.
Right. Lovely. I agree with that assessment, and that I think multiple lives are playing out simultaneously. So that, a past life is going on congruent with the physical life and perhaps with a future life. I know that sounds way out there, but I agree with his assessment on that. I think it's much
crazy.
more expansive.
Sometimes it's just you try to think about it in human terms and you just can't accept it. It's so hard to,
Yeah,
human
you
brains can't comprehend that.
No, they think there's a stop and an end to everything, but to me, it's just ongoing. It's ongoing.
I want to ask a question because I think a lot of our listeners might be interested in kind of understanding, because you were saying before that spirits and angels and even, I guess, loved ones can come through and give us messages. What exactly can someone expect? How can that come through? Maybe you can give the listeners an idea or kind of a framework of what that could come through as, so they can also open their eyes or ears and make sure that they're, being aware of that and that they can kind of expect that sometimes, right?
Okay. All right. So let's break it down. As I was trying to say earlier, but I'll break it down in simpler terms if I can. Okay. So let's say you're in bed at night and you have a dream of your loved one. That's a clairvoyant ability, by the way. You can clearly see them in your dream. Some people tell me they can't dream. That's fine. Okay. So to me, that's how mediumship works. I'll have dreams of my clients' loved ones come to me. That's clairvoyancy, basically, in a nutshell. Okay. It is also daydreaming. So if, for instance, you're going about your business, all of a sudden, Grandpa comes to mind just spontaneously. And a moment, you see him and he says something or relives something from, a moment together. That's a visitation. That's clairvoyant. Okay. That means clearly seeing. Okay. So that's, to me, the only difference between myself as a professional and any ordinary person is the only thing is I've learned to trust those.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take it to the next phase. Okay. So if we're talking about clairaudience, which means clear hearing, if you hear their voice in your head like a thought, it's a thought, and it's coming through in their voice, something that they would normally say, then that's clairaudience. Okay. I don't know if you've ever had an experience with a loved one who's crossed over and, you would say, oh, so-and-so would have said, right?
Yeah.
Because you can hear it in your thoughts, right?
We've been lucky enough to not have too many family members pass away that we were connected with. So Lorena and I really haven't been able to experience that from our side. Our grandparents died, but they weren't really in our lives. So that was really about it. But I know what you're saying.
They can come back. They can come back in that regard. Because I have some clients go, well, I wasn't too connected, but they'll find out the message does connect to them. So, and you might want to shrug those things off, but don't. You might want to write them down when they come to you because there's probably something relevant there. There's probably a reason why they came to you. Okay. It can also come forth. For instance, I've had clients who said that they have their voicemail messages from a loved one, okay, and all of a sudden it plays, and, that message is there's a reason for the message playing at that moment in time, okay? Or, for instance, let's say there was a connection to a song, and you're riding along in the car and the song plays and you instantly think about them. That's a visitation.
Okay.
They're connecting from other realms. Okay. So I know that sounds, again, far out there, but that's how they do it.
It's interesting.
So the feeling is the feeling is, I don't know if you've ever felt, so at night, I don't know if you've ever felt somebody brush up against you or felt like you're being touched, like a finger, somebody touching your foot or an arm or a hand. Have you ever felt that? You thought,
Not me, no.
kind of freaked.
No. I had a really bad experience so many years ago. And I think the lesson for me was I wasn't protecting myself with the Akashic records that I at the time was studying. And I went back to my teacher and said, something grabbed me. Like I felt two hands grab me by the ankles and pull me down, but didn't feel like, I didn't feel nice. It felt like someone was mad at me or something. And she's like, she had explained to me, because I was new to the whole thing. She's like, you're like, those mosquito lights? The mosquito lights that call the mosquitoes in, well, you're the little light now. They can see you. And if you're not protecting yourself, those negative energies will come to the little mosquito light. And she's like, you got to start taking it seriously, because I was not taking the protection part seriously. So the experience I did have was not like a nice one.
Right. But here's the other thing too. If you're in fear, they'll attach to that fear.
Yeah. That's a scary
So
part.
that's why it's really important you keep your energy up and to my students, I suggest just doing your basics. Basics are getting enough rest, eating nutritiously so that you're energized, and as well getting your exercise. Those are the basics. Yeah. And so many people ignore the basics, but those basics in themselves can offer a lot of protection.
Yeah,
because
then you're not taking it seriously, definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the feeling thing, you can get that sense or vibe. And a lot of women are very sensitive in this regard, because as girls, we're raised to be very connected to our emotions, whereas boys are raised in our culture, unfortunately, to shut down their emotions. So that's why women have these experiences more prominently than men do. Not to say men don't, but women have that sense of feeling about things, if it's not right or if it's good, you know what I'm saying, at a gut level, right. But you can also feel them in the sense and feeling, when I say feeling, it also means clairsentient, means clearly feeling. And feeling can also encompass scent. So let's say Grandpa smoked a cigar, and I'll just keep using Grandpa here. Grandpa smoked a cigar, and you're sitting in a room and nobody's smoking cigars, but you can smell the cigar. Or his aftershave, and you could automatically connect who that is, because that smells like Grandpa's cigar. Yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I have a grandmother who comes through, and I always know when she's coming into my field because I smell baby powder. She wore baby powder all the time. That was her perfume of the day, that's how I remember her smelling. So before she comes through with any messages, I get the scent that she's with me.
Is she coming through to like comfort you in that case?
Yeah, usually to share something, and she's come through on my dreams. On occasion, it's not like I'm invoking her. They'll just come. But you can invoke them. Invoking them just means call upon them.
Yeah.
And here's a great exercise. If there's somebody, and I'm saying this to the listening audience, if there's somebody that you want to call forth and make a connection, put a pad of paper near your bed at night with a pen and invoke them to come through to your dreams. And if it doesn't work the first time, keep asking every night until it happens. It will happen. I promise. But again, if you're scared, don't do it. So you want to don't do it, because it will happen. But I don't want to encourage anybody to be from that zone, because it is loving, and it usually is a very gentle message and connection that happens. And that's the easiest way to have those connections, is through the dream. And if we've got any listeners out there who say, well, I can't remember my dreams. Well, you just put up a block. That's a block.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. That's a block. You will receive them in a dream.
Okay, I'm gonna try
and
that.
then the moment it happens, pop up and write it down immediately, even if it sounds abstract.
Yeah.
I feel like I've only had one experience with kind of spirits like that. I was at a hotel with my fiance, and we were both sleeping, and he woke up from a nightmare, and I was also having a nightmare at the same exact time. And all of a sudden I freak out, and I feel he doesn't say anything. I feel like someone's watching me. I feel like there's a spirit or there's like a ghost in here. And then he says, "Oh my God, I feel the same exact thing." He's not like, he doesn't freak out.
Interesting.
It took me like 45 minutes to fall asleep because I was like, oh my God, something happened like in this area of this hotel one day, because I had like goosebumps all over my body. And then I was just like covering myself. I was like, oh my God. And I was freaked out, and I was like, I shouldn't be freaked out. It's going to be okay. But I think that's like
when you're freaked out by a spirit like that and it feels uncomfortable, ask them to go away. And I know it sounds silly, but just go away. Okay. I don't need you in my space right now. So, if you need to, shout it, and they will leave. And if that doesn't comfort you, then call forth your angels to come in, or your angel to come in and to protect the space so you can sleep soundly throughout the night.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll definitely do that. What happens again?
I just want to pick
your... It doesn't mean that there was something wrong with the spirit. There was obviously maybe perhaps some trauma that was associated to the space, and they haven't disengaged from it. So that could be a caught spirit.
Yeah. I just wanted to pick your brain with one little thing. So I'm going to call her my grandma, but she's not from my blood. She's not my blood side. She's basically this lady that my mom was told when I was a baby that I was going to die. She went to all these doctors. This is in South America. She goes to all these doctors until she finally hits one doctor that says, listen, your daughter's just dying. So I'm going to give you the name and address of this lady. She's a psychic. Just go to her, ask her to do a scan of her body, and come back and tell me exactly what the lady said. And so they took my mom. I was like, I was holding you in my arms. You were this like fragile little thing. I go to this lady's house, knock on her door, and I literally throw you in her arms and say, tell me what's wrong with her. And so she did the scan and then said what she saw. And then the doctors were able to kind of figure out what was wrong with me. But so that became kind of like my grandma. So my connection with her is very, very strong. But so I remember, fast forward like many, many years later, I want to say 15 years later or 16 or 17, my sister and I were living in London, and I was going through a very depressive time. And I remember I was making a big decision and saying, am I going to stay here? I'm going to go back to Uruguay. Like, what do I want to do with my life? I'm not happy here. And I went to sleep like super depressed that night. And when I went to sleep, I dreamt all of a sudden my grandma touches me on my shoulder, who's still alive, touches me on my shoulder and says, Lucia, wake up. I said, oh my God, what are you doing here? And she said, I came to visit you. I know that you're upset. And I said,
I remember this.
She said, this is such a lovely little apartment you have. Oh, look. And she starts talking and showing. And I said, are you here to help me figure out what to do? And she said, yeah, well, what's wrong? I said, I think I don't want to be here anymore. She goes, then just leave. And I said, like that easy? She goes, yeah, then just leave. I said, yeah, you're probably right, Grandma. Thanks. And I went to sleep. I went back to sleep, supposedly. And then when I woke up in the morning, I call my mom and I say, Mom, you need to call Grandma for me. Oh my God, I swear to God, I had a dream with her and it felt so vivid. She goes, Lucia, Grandma stayed overnight and slept in your bed, your old bed last night. And she said that she went to visit you last night and she described your room.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm like, put Grandma on the phone. And my grandma's like, oh, I went to visit you last night. Your apartment's so lovely. I was like, oh my God. That's not mediumship.
Love it.
What is that, astral travel?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's astral production. I can't even say the word. Yes, it is. It is that. But did she consciously do it?
I don't know. She never told me. I think it was because she was laying in the bed that I had left a year before. So it was like my room with my energy. She was sleeping in my bed.
Yeah.
And I was depressed that same exact night. I think that she somehow could, because she would pick up, she was like psychic to the point where she would pick up when someone was really off or upset or needed help. And she would like search for them somehow. So she must have done it. Yeah.
Yes. That is astral projection, but she didn't probably realize she was doing it. But also when you touch a person's physical belongings, possessions, there's a transference of energy, and that is got another name for it. What is that name? It's another psychic ability. And she's obviously very psychic, so she was picking up the vibes from your possession. Yeah. So I can't think of the word for what it's called right now, but that's how some psychics will read, let's say, somebody's jewelry, or they'll take a picture, a photograph of something, and can read from that. And psychometry, that's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
she was just, she's obviously a very, intense psychic, so she picked up the energy and she could connect. But that's very similar to how our spirit guides, our loved ones, can communicate exactly the same way.
Go into your dream.
Yes, go into your dreams. Absolutely. So yeah, it can happen on the physical level, and it can happen on the spiritual level as well.
It was amazing, just like hearing her describe a room that she never even saw in pictures, because I didn't even have a picture of it. She knew the entire room. She knew everything. She's like, oh, your bed was gray and you have a duvet and this and that. I'm like, oh my God.
That was so weird.
Did you heed her advice?
Yes, I left. I moved back to Uruguay. Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I know it's usually we make it more difficult than what it really is, don't we?
For sure.
But the funnier part is she could have called me on the phone and told me the same thing. I'd be like, this old lady's a wacko, forget it. But like, she said it in a dream, so I took her seriously then for some reason.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I don't read family and friends, because when I tell them in person, they're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different level. Yeah, it's a whole different level when it comes through the dream. Yes.
It's crazy.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing.
No worries. You can share it anytime.
That.
It's amazing. She's weird. The thing is, her husband died. They were married for 45 years. So after that, she totally let go of her gift and started getting sick. So, and I really think it's linked. I think that her letting go of her gift and no longer helping people had created the sickness. So she's currently not doing too well. And she called my mom the other day and said, tell Lucia that the day I leave, she's going to inherit my abilities. And I was like, oh, yeah, she said that. And I said, really? I was like, well, don't tell her to die yet. I'm not ready to inherit anything.
Oh my God.
Grief. Do you see that her grief spiraled her down, and the energy went down, and those connections she was unable to maintain that connection.
Exactly. Yeah.
And actually, if she gave her gift again, it would re-energize her.
That's what we all tell her that. Yeah.
Decide. That's for her soul to decide. Yeah. It's got to be very hard. Grief is hard.
I think she took it really personally, because she gets visit from a lot of like spirits and stuff. Yet when her husband died, she thought, why is he the only one that's not visiting me?
Yeah, that's true. She says that.
Because she's grieving about him.
Yeah.
So the grief will block that connection. That's another reason why people will come to mediums, because they aren't making that connection themselves.
Yeah.
And they're open to the possibilities of making that connection. So if we're taking care of ourselves and we're getting better, that's when the connections got stronger for myself when I started to heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So pay note. I mean, if you, anybody out there listening and they want to make a connection to a loved one, just start nurturing yourself and, make the social connections, get out there, hug people. One of the things that Dr. Kubler-Ross always said, and I love her work, she was the one who came up with the 5 steps of grief. Anyway, she said that if we just hug 4 times a day, that's just for survival level. And if we hug 8 times a day, hug people 8 times a day, that's just maintaining. If we hug 12 times a day, we're thriving as human beings. But how many people are hugging these days when they're sitting there dinking behind cell phones?
Are we supposed to hug different people, or can I just hug the same person? Does it count the same?
It's harder. It's harder. And I got one more quick story. I don't know how much time we've got.
Yeah.
No, we have all the time in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got another lovely story where I had a woman who came to book a session with me, and she wanted to connect with her former husband. And I tell people, if you've got questions, write them out. Even if you don't give them to me and you've got them written out, at least Spirit will understand and know what you're intending to be addressed. Okay. Yeah. So she wrote out her questions the night before, went to sleep. She says she hears a phone call in the middle of the night. She picks up the phone. It's her husband on the other end of the phone. Who's deceased. Shares the answers to all of her questions.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. And so I know I get chills still at this story. And she says she wakes up the next morning holding the phone in her hand.
Oh my God. It was, just confirming it was true. Oh my God.
Yeah. So she called me the next day, of course, to cancel the appointment because she said she got all of her answers. But that's an example of
that's good.
Which is okay, because quite honestly, those kind of connections are 10 times stronger than working through a medium.
Yeah.
So people always need more proof, even if they are working through a medium, because they're expecting to hear exactly something specifically. Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of being open to some of the messages that might come through that are more important that they might need. But anyway, the point is that that kind of intimate connection with Spirit is going to be 10 times more powerful and much more healing for an individual who's grieving than working with another party, an intermediary party like a medium. So
do you ever get someone come to you and ask things like, where is the document for or the blah blah bank account or something? Can you ask my husband?
I do. Uh-huh. I do have some people ask those questions. Sometimes I'm on, sometimes I'm not. But I think one woman was looking for a ring, and she found it where, I brought it through from her grandmother. And then I think there was a family who once called me about their missing dog who ended up showing back up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Missing children are the hardest, though. Missing children are the hardest.
Yeah, and I know
sad.
I know a lot of people turn to mediums for that, don't they? Because they don't know what to do, right?
Yeah, they don't, but I won't work with families anymore because then I become too biased. It's too emotional.
Yeah.
So I only work with law enforcement if the law enforcement's open and willing.
Yeah.
But
they reach out to you and contact you, or?
Yeah, if the family contacts me, I tell them to put law enforcement in connection with me, and I'll work through the law enforcement.
You get too emotional and you get too attached to the family that you don't receive. Is that why?
Yeah, and they're crying, and I start crying, and it doesn't work. Then it doesn't work because I want what they want. Yeah, and I can't remain unbiased.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially when it's like your emotions overcome you, and then you can't work, you can't do your job, you can't channel.
Yeah, because your energy is spiraling down, which we talked about that, and what I learned through my process of recovery and healing, that you have to keep your energy up in order to make the connections possible. Yeah. You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah. I think that's a good lesson for everybody here listening. You have to take care of yourself. Even if you're not a medium or you're not doing Akashic Records, like you still need to keep your energy high, because you can still receive messages. You still can like connect to your guides and everything. So I think that's important. That's good advice, I think.
Yeah, keep connected to spirit, because our society has a good way of dismissing that part of our being, which is probably the most important part. I mean, we've got mind and body, but they don't acknowledge that spirit connection, or it's not, it's the intuitive nature, it's the feminine, which isn't it isn't revered in our society to the,
so true.
to the capacity it could be, and really work in our favor if it were embraced more. So,
I think the bigger issue is like nobody's present anymore. Everybody's just, thinking about this and that and on their phone and TV, and like no one's really actually totally fully there in their head, or they're just like, too many thoughts, too much going on, and not just here and now,
Yeah, I agree. And I can find myself there too. The cell phones are definitely a great distraction, as is Netflix.
Or GAIA as well.
GAIA's my big thing too. Yeah. That's how
GAIA,
I saw. Yeah, that's how I found you. Yeah.
Yeah, GAIA. Yeah, any one of those streaming services for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, so I think I don't know if you have anything else you want to say to the audience, or maybe any advice, but we don't want to take too much of your time, because I know you're probably really busy. But as well, before we close off, just make sure you tell people where they can find you or how they can get in touch with you. So we'll also put that in the show notes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. I can be reached. Probably the easiest way now is all you have to do is Google radio medium lauralee.com, and that will take you to my site and also my radio show, and people can, call me there. And that's an easy way, or they can get a private session. They don't have to go on public air. I know a lot of people are scared about doing that, going public and saying, hey, I'm connecting with spirit publicly on air. But I still privately counsel people as well. So
that's great. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking all this time with us and talking to us about all these things. We were really excited to pick your brain.
Thank you. It was amazing. Yeah. Just hearing your stories and your whole process, and it's just so fascinating. It's amazing. I don't think I've ever spoken to a medium, so that's cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So am I your first medium on the show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you discuss it with some others, you might find that. I think a lot of them have had near-death experiences, what I found. So some of them relate along those same planes of existence. Not all of them, but I found a lot of them out there in the field in my profession have had those personal experiences and realized it's not so scary after all.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be fearful of. We don't die. That's the big message.
That's the big message. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good message.
I love it. Perfect. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you
for taking the time to come here. We hope you have a great day.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. We hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. We want to also thank Laura Lee for taking the time to come onto the podcast and share so much insight and wisdom. We truly had a great time interviewing her and just got into so many different topics. It was just amazing. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @soul_tribe_podcast. As well, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you feel called to leave a rating and review on iTunes, we would greatly appreciate it. We hope you have a great week, and thank you again for tuning in. Bye.